for those of us that have been with it since the beginning, and those that have joined us more recently, we've come a long way. So really excited to share the updates that we've got today. So let me get back over to my slides. Just a disclaimer, the presentation and all of the people that are giving presentations, it's our opinions. It's not reflection of our companies that we work for. It's all representative of what we are doing with KIPP as individuals. Next, we do have an antitrust statement and policy. We follow all antitrust laws, and you guys can read just as well as I can speak through these, so I won't spend too much time on it. Similar to, any other industry organization that you belong to. A little introduction to KIPP, our vision and mission. KIPP was formed about 3 years ago, and we started with about 8 members. We've recently surpassed 500 on our LinkedIn website. You'll hear more about membership in a little bit. So there's our vision and mission and our programs and committees. Some of those committees are newly created. So here's our agenda for the day. We went through the welcome and antitrust. I'll go through a little bit of the executive committee introduction, and then the committees will update for about 10 minutes. There'll be some program updates. Then we'll go into the direction for KIPP, and last we'll finish with a question and answer discussion period. I have in bright red there to remind me more than anything that I was about to plow through them. If you have a question during the presentation, you'll be able to see in the Teams. I'll share this part right here. So question and answer. If you have a question during the session, if everyone can mute that isn't presenting, that would be great. You can ask a question here.
I'm good.
And
I'm getting old, so
Tommy, is it possible to mute everyone except for me?
I think I found the person. So
Thank you. Thank you. So you can pose a question, and if you don't want to have your name displayed with the question, you can click that post anonymously. So those questions will be addressed either at the end if we have enough time for all of them, or we'll make some subsequent posts answering those on LinkedIn at a following up in the discussions coming out of the meeting. And then we'll have some live polling. You don't have to do anything with your computer or your phone or anything to do that. The question will pop up, I believe, in the chat, and you'll be able to submit your reply, and we'll be able to see those on screen. With that, here's an introduction to our executive committee. This is my crappy attempt at photoshopping, because we haven't actually all 8 been together in the same room since 2019. And so I just tried to create the original 8 of us. So trying to create a little fun here too. So from an executive committee introduction standpoint, you'll be hearing most of the voices listed here today. I'm the chair, Rod Patch is the vice chair, Ralph Basile is our secretary, and Deanne Dodrell is our treasurer. And then the other 4 members that were with us originally are all members at large. So Pex Run, Amanda Benedict, Professor Laura Bix, and Dr. Jian Lee. And then John Loger was our sponsor for the original group. From a communication standpoint, hopefully if you haven't joined our LinkedIn group yet, please do so. The link is there off to the right that you can follow. You can always search for it on LinkedIn as well. And then we also have a Microsoft Teams environment. So if you're currently active in a project, or as you get active in any of the projects or committees, you'll get an invite to the Microsoft Teams environment. I'm not going to go too far into our accomplishments because I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for the presenters today. And these will be spoken about a little bit later, both the accomplishments and what we're working on. So with that, we will go into committee updates. And the first one is membership. And I believe it is going to be presented by Kat. Thank you.
I haven't gotten a chance to meet you. I'm Kat Olson. And as you can kind of see on the screen, this is a very new group. We only started back in June or July of this past year out of the Kilmer conference that just happened. So the last couple of months, what we've been really doing is trying to focus on what are our goals for this group? What is our value proposition to KIPP? And what we've focused on and kind of centered on is that we really want to be member centric. What our goal here is we want to facilitate our members to be connected to programs and projects that they feel passionate about. And the reason we want to do that is because if someone is passionate about what they're working on, they're going to be more engaged. And that engagement is going to help drive that innovation that is at the core of what KIPP is really standing for. So that's kind of what our, real purpose is here. And then some of our objectives are that network expansion. If we can connect people to experts and other members, we can create that higher engagement and that innovation. So that's pretty much what we've been working on. And one of the big things is that we found getting an echo. But I'm going to
Tommy,
stop going
can
through
you
that.
mute everyone again?
So one of the things that we did do was we got a member count, and what we're at is we're at 519 members between our LinkedIn and all of our active rosters. So we are a large group considering we're only 3 years old, and that's been awesome for us. So on the next slide here, to kind of go on with what we've been doing over the last, if we can go to the next slide, what we've been doing over the last couple months is, next slide, nope, back. I'm going to have a poll that's going to pop up. And the idea here is what this membership group wants us to do is, if you can, tell us what you are interested about within KIPP or what you want us to focus on, being that we really want to drive that engagement. On the slide, I know it's kind of busy, but these are pictures just from pretty much just this past year, with the exception of our first initial picture back underneath membership right there. That's been this past year, and we've had a great year with all the different conferences and activities that this group has been in. So if you can give us, if the poll has popped up, I don't know if it has for anybody else, but we just want to hear from the top, everyone's top 3 for what you think would be great for this membership group to kind of work on while we go through the next year. And if you have any suggestions outside of that, just drop it in the chat. Thanks. I'm done. So next slide.
Thank you, Kat. And with education, I believe we have Tanya and possibly Peter.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Jen, and it's great to see all the fun on this slide. What we saw there. So I'm Peter Van Gool, co-chairing this education committee together with Tanya Magana. The challenge that we see is in the sterility assurance value chain is we all have different interpretation or limited knowledge on how sterile packaging is manufactured, sterilized, stored, and all these kind of things. So the mission of our committee is to promote cross-functional best practices and foster an understanding of the different groups and educate the stakeholders. And create provocations that support the debate of the human bias to do how we've always done it. So we are looking at universities where it all starts, of course, healthcare professionals, sterile processing departments, packaging professionals, and industry organizations. So I'd like to hand it over to Tanya now here, who will talk about our accomplishments and current and upcoming activities. So Tanya, over to you.
Great, thanks, Peter. You can go to the next slide, please. So within KIPP Education, we have a couple different accomplishments. And one of those is a white paper. We've completed the draft of that white paper and have it ready. We're just trying to find a location to publish. But this one is focusing on medical device packaging development, validation, and qualification process from a packaging engineer's perspective. But the audience for that is healthcare professionals. So really breaking down the barriers that we have, a difference in languages that healthcare professionals and packaging engineers speak, and trying to bring us together closer. So that's one of the things that look for in 2023 coming. Another accomplishment that we have is podcasts. There's a couple different ones that are listed there. We have about 30,000 listeners. So it's a great way to get connected with some of the happenings within KIPP, just with some of the gaps within industry and just learning as well. So I encourage everybody to jump on some of those podcasts. We have a student education survey in process right now. So this was a survey that went out to different schools within the US, focusing on packaging curriculum, identifying those packaging courses and how, if they're offering medical device education for those packaging engineers. Really, the goal here with the survey is to bring together our healthcare students, our packaging engineers, and healthcare facilities, so that we're all breaking down that silo working approach from our student education, and we'll portray that into our industry professionals. And then future looking, we want to create some end-to-end videos. A couple different videos within that would be our manufacturing process for stale barrier systems, all the way from the manufacturing to arrival at our healthcare facilities. And then the last 100 yards or last meters once our package arrives at the healthcare facility, all the way to the waste of that medical device packaging, and then stale processing as well. So that's it for KIPP, and I'll hand it over to Jan and Kennedy in marketing.
Hey, Jen, just real quick. I didn't mean to interrupt you guys, but I know we have a lot of people that joined very late, so maybe we could just talk about the Q&A again. There's a Q&A button up at the top. And
Sure.
if you have any questions, please drop them in there, questions or comments, and then toward the end, Rod and I are curating that, so all questions will get answered, but somebody taking
Excellent.
off.
No, thank you, Ralph. If everyone
Yeah.
can please put their microphones on mute if you're
Yeah.
not speaking, that would be great. Kennedy and Yen, it's all you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Kennedy Peacock. I am the co-chair with Yen Glotzbeck of the Marketing, Communications, and Branding Committee. So our mission is to work with, basically function as the KIPP Marketing Communications Department. So that includes internal and external communications. We communicate with internal working groups and members about upcoming opportunities and activities. We also promote KIPP with externally and promote our projects and our announcements by working with external partners like media, publications, etc. So this is our nice team. And if you do not have access to our team site, because we are the marketing communications people and want to facilitate the communication, if you do not have access to our team site, please contact Ralph. He'd be happy to add you to that. And I'll pass it over to Yen to cover what we've been working on this past year.
Thanks, Kennedy, for the great introduction of our committee. So in 2022, the committee has developed a brand guideline, which includes logo usage, color palette, brand governance. The committee has also developed a LinkedIn page guideline, as well as some templates for PowerPoints, letterheads, and all these resources can be found on KIPP's team site. And you can see here also a link is embedded on this slide. So in 2023, we're looking to develop a social media strategy, mainly focusing on LinkedIn engagement, a publication guideline, and also potentially a website for KIPP. This is a very high-level summary. So if you have any questions, ideas, or want to join our team, please reach out to Kennedy or me. Thank you.
Thank you, you guys. Moving into fundraising, I believe that is with Austin.
Thanks, Jen. Hello, KIPPsters. My name is Austin Liu, and I'm representing the KIPP Fundraising Committee today. Our objective is to raise and allocate funds to support KIPP projects and exploits. Our accomplishments to date are we have partnered with the Flexible Packaging Association, or FPA, as our fiscal agent to hold and disperse funds per KIPP's directions. An advantage that we'd like to call out here is with the FPA as our fiscal agent, there is no cost to administrative efforts to KIPP. A disadvantage that we would like to call out today is donors cannot currently claim a tax deduction. With regard to ongoing activities, the fundraising committee is working to develop fundraising mechanisms and establishing guidelines for how KIPP will fundraise, working with projects and program leaders to determine budgetary needs, And then lastly, defining processes and guidelines for allocating and dispersing funds. What the committee is looking for from today's audience is for a representative, a passionate representative from each program and committee to sit on the fundraising committee to share your program and committee's needs so that the fundraising committee can understand how to guide fundraising activities and finance management. Thank you. Next slide, please.
All right, with that, we're going to be moving into our program updates, and we're going to start with Let's Speed Things Up. We have 3 program managers, and I'm not quite sure which one is going to be speaking today.
Hello, everyone. This is Hank Blom, representing the program managers for Let's Speed Things Up. I believe Nora is on the line. I think I saw her. I think Charlie was having some issues getting connected, so I'm not sure if he made it. So the scope of Let's Speed Things Up is that our goal is to focus on transforming processes to improve the speed to market within the medical device value chain. We have very broad representation with MDMs, converters, test labs, end users, and we're always looking for more, and we'll get to that on the last slide. Next slide, please. So we've got one major project that we have titled Wicked Stability, and that's been going on for close on 2 years now. You can see who the core team is there: Rod, Jordan, Dan, myself, Jen, Wendy, and Chris. The main focus of this Wicked Stability project is to basically reimagine the way we do stability studies in the medical device world. A little bit more detail on the next slide, if we could move one up. Thank you. So another way of stating what we want to do is we want to use material science and what we know about materials and their degradation mechanisms or not, to drive a data-driven and optimized approach to how we do our stability studies. Obviously, right now, the gold standard is F1980, but we're trying to think outside the box and come up with a better, less repetitive, and more value-added way of doing those stability studies. We've made a number of industry-wide presentations over the last year and have garnered a lot of support and a lot of interest in the project. And so now, besides just that core team that was on the previous slide, we now have a number of work streams. So the OIT work stream is the one that is going to develop the sort of the technical backbone and foundation to the entire approach. That team had an excellent meeting yesterday, actually. The MPTP work stream is working with a number of other players in the industry that have aging data that we are hoping to be able to leverage in a way that will provide even more of a data-based foundation for the work that we're doing. So actually those 2 work streams, the MPTP and the MDM work streams, are both geared towards the same thing, but coming at it from slightly different angles. And then there's also a regulatory data work stream, and that's working with the FDA to understand recall data related to packaging and how that might impact our approach to stability studies as well. Next slide. So again, there you see our scope. We'd love to have more people in the group, so reach out to either Nora or Charlie or myself. And we're also looking for other ideas for projects that fit within that scope. So picture your face in that frame over there. So with that, I'll hand it over to the next group.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Terry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Terry Meadow. I have the pleasure, along with John Logard, to co-manage together the Last 100 Yards program channel, or maybe I should say the Last 91 Meters program channel for those outside of the U.S. This is where we are looking at what happens between when a device enters the hospital system all the way through the point of use. And we have 4 different projects underway. I want to highlight to you, all in different stages and being well managed and implemented by a lot of great team members doing great work. So starting with the very first one, we've got a team that's characterizing the last 100 yards, this journey of the medical device through the system. And this is being co-managed by Austin Liu and Jade Severin with the many team members that you can see listed there. But again, this is like a multi-phase project. And basically, they're really trying to define a roadmap, that the device travels through these last 100 yards or 91 meters so that we can enhance the industry's comprehension of what is taking place there. And they can use that for enhanced planning and development purposes. And they're underway. This is a relatively new one, but they are building a flow chart for the last 100 yards. They have submitted a project charter to the KIPP Executive Committee. There is the project is currently on hold as there's a need for a legal disposition that the EC is helping them with, and so that guidance is being worked on. Next slide. Another team we have is what we call our repetitive handling team, being managed by Kat Olson and Jennifer Zeck. Again, many team members involved. They have been studying the repeated handling of medical devices by healthcare professionals and looking at the potential additional risk that may be posed by all the handling that takes place in terms of potentially increasing the surface contamination on the sterile barrier system. They've actually already conducted their formative and summative studies. They're complete. They did a great job, and they're currently in the phase of drafting a peer review article. Moving on to the next slide. Then we have our external transport team, and this is being managed by Kathy Castro and Kat Olson, again with help from another team member, Tara Kramer. And they've been studying, trying to understand the mechanical environmental conditions of medical devices and medical packaging and what it's exposed to during the external transport process to and from central sterile processing, storage areas, and to external healthcare facilities. And they are also in a stage of drafting their article for peer review. And then moving on to our next slide with our fourth and final project. Here we have the Soil Dry Time project being led by Tara and Sue Klasik, where they have been studying the conditions that impact soil dry time on soiled medical devices. And again, they're in a process of writing their article for peer review. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Sarah and Melinda, I think you guys were planning to talk about these slides for aseptic handling.
I'm Sarah Rosenblum. I co-lead the aseptic handling team with Melinda Lamari, who I believe is also on the call. We are one of the larger groups within the KIPP organization. This is the list of all of our current team members and kind of what we've been working on to date. So thus far, we completed our first observation assessment over the last Kilmer period before the Kilmer conference in Greece. For that observation document, we basically were looking to get feedback over what is happening in hospitals as far as how end users are engaging with packaging, how they are opening it, and the techniques they're using to do so. So we conducted that observations document. We got over 60 observations. We reported on that data at the Kilmer conference. We also had the opportunity to redo that presentation and present it again to everybody at the MDPTC all-member meeting. We've also shared some of that data in podcasts thus far, and we plan on potentially working on getting that into a white paper as well. We're hoping that the next stage of our development, as far as our next assignment goes, kind of plays into enhancing the data that we got over the previous exploration. Next slide. So what are our next steps? We have 2 action items thus far. Our first one kind of output that we saw after the observation document was, okay, now we know what's happening in the hospital space. Now how do we prove what is the best way to open a package and put some data behind that? So from that, we kind of came up with the idea of creating an ASTM standard for glitter bug assessment. So for those of you that don't know what Glitterbug is, it is a way to see visual transfer and try to quantify contamination as far as opening and interacting with packages goes. So currently, we are working on putting definition behind conducting a Glitterbug assessment. The goal would be to then use that to help define that question of what makes the best opening method. We are in the process of drafting that method, and then we're going to present that draft internally prior to then taking it to our ASTM committee to hopefully get it then approved to continue moving forward as a standard. Currently, some of the challenges that we're facing are resources for an interlaboratory study. It is going to take a village to try out this method. So we're working on getting some resources as far as that goes. Then we're determining what the best Glitterbug method is. There is kind of a lotion and a powder application for this method. We're really working on the pros and cons of both of those, not only from usability standpoint, but also from a budgetary standpoint and an ease of use and access to the product as well. And then we're also fighting a lot of stigmatisms around Glitterbug. Some folks don't think it is the best method to working towards defining what is the best way to open a package from a contamination standpoint. But thus far, we're pretty confident in this being our best path forward as far as a data gathering exercise and having something that's a little bit more quantifiable. Action item 2, once we have the method, we then want to go use it. So our plan is to use that method to conduct an assessment of pouch opening techniques to, again, help answer that question of which one is best and which one yields to the least amount of contamination. Next slide. So to conduct the method and to start authoring that, this is kind of our main team leading that. Deanne Dodrell is taking the committee leader position for the method creation, and then her method warriors are those that are really getting down into the weeds of creating the method. Are some of the folks listed here. We have Artie Roth, Lori Freer, Paul Perez, Tony Trier, Matt Terbush, Gian Lee, Austin Liu, and Swandong Kular. So these folks have been really instrumental in starting that authorship, and we are excited to report back on that as we make more progress. Next slide. So just looking at our timeline of the future here, we're hoping to complete that first draft of the ASTM method by the end of January. We'll then present it internally to our larger group, take feedback on that, and following that feedback, we will then submit to ASTM for the proposition of our method. Following that, we're hoping to have ASTM subcommittee approval. If that is the case, then our group will select members that will continue on with that method creation through the ASTM avenues. And then we will begin doing our trial studies starting in Q2, Q3 of this year. I put an asterisk of at risk because we are actually going to try to use the method before maybe it is launched with ASTM, just from a timing standpoint of being able to utilize it prior to it being officially released within the ASTM committee. We'll then do evaluation of interlaboratory studies, so actually getting hands-on, utilizing our method, making sure that it works across different people, different labs, different packaging situations, etc. We'll then apply our method, and then we will report on that data found. So like I said in the beginning, our hope is to take the observation data that we have from our first exercise and then really enhance it towards proving this is what we saw, this is why we see it being successful in the future as far as utilizing a specific method that will have data behind. Ultimately, our goal is to be able to enhance not only education from an end user standpoint, but also designs as far as working better from an end user standpoint. And that is the kind of current state of where we're at. Next slide.
Thanks, Sarah. Kylie and Jen.
All right, thank you, everyone. This is Kylie Jepstrom. Jen Goff and I have the fortune of co-leading the Sustainability and End-of-Life program, which consists of a diverse group of industry professionals along the value chain and geographies with EU and US representation. And illustrated here is a snapshot of our active members. And if you are passionate about this topic, we always welcome new members willing to roll up their sleeves. Next slide. So the Sustainability and End of Life program, we are focused on enabling upstream innovation by increasing industry collaboration, building awareness and education, and arming stakeholders with business cases to achieve more circular outcomes for medical device packaging. And when this program began, we asked ourselves, what barriers are inhibiting our ability to make progress and change the way our industry has always done something? To answer this question, we conducted a qualitative industry survey back in 2020 and 2021, and interviews with key opinion leaders and stakeholders with the aim to identify and break down barriers to entry for upstream innovation. And this output was shared with industry at a couple of MDMs, including MDM West 2022 at the Kilmer Conference in June 2022 and via a webinar. Next slide. Our flagship project pertains to breaking down the barriers to incorporating advanced recycled materials in sterile barrier packaging that Jen will outline next. Jen?
Yes, thank you, Kylie. Jen Goff, like Kylie said, I have the pleasure of not only working with Kylie on this, but these amazing people that are very passionate about sustainability and healthcare packaging. So as you, many of you have probably heard of advanced recycling or chemical recycling or molecular recycling. And really what it is it's a process that breaks down mixed plastic waste to the molecular level to then create virgin polymers. So it really helps us create this circularity that we are looking for when looking at sustainability initiatives. So next slide. So through the work of this flagship project, we have identified 4 barriers to overcome. And associated with each barrier, we have working groups and co-leads or leads for each barrier. The 4 barriers you see on the screen, value proposition, regulation, manufacturing readiness, and industry education, are all barriers that we see needing to be overcome in order to successfully implement this technology into industry. The barrier team leads right now are in the process of, some of them have already done this work, but some of them are still in the process of scoping each barrier and then identifying their projects and goals and objectives for 2023. I would say we're probably 70% along on that journey. But if you are interested in supporting any of these barrier teams or supporting the sustainability group within KIP, please reach out to Kylie or I, and we would be happy to welcome you to the team and help you get integrated into the work that we're doing to get advanced recycling into industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen and Kylie. I think we're running a couple minutes ahead of time, which is fine. Sopec, KIP's direction, help us out.
All right, so to understand where we're going with KIP, it's helpful to understand where we came from. So, of course, in 2019, we started in Dublin, and it was just 8 of us, and we've come a long way from that initial meeting. So, one of the biggest things is we now have real bylaws. We are an actual organization. As part of that, we went through a lot of discussions. We're trying to decide what kind of organization do we want to be. Do we want to form our own 501c3? Do we want to partner with another organization? Ultimately, we went with what we're doing now, where with the mechanism to handle funds, we are partnering with FPA to do that part of it. So we're not our own taxable entity, at least not at this point. We have officers in place. Right now we have a number of programs, which we've of course gone over up to this point in the presentation. And we also have formed a number of committees, such as membership committee, fundraising committee, and so forth, that will help to aid in our growth. So what's next will be one of the things we're working on next is to refine the governance with a focus on reducing legal risk. So, for example, ultimately, we don't want to be sued. How do we
make sure we mitigate that kind of risk. We'll be continuing to build out our infrastructure. You know, as I mentioned, we decided fairly early on that we would not become a 501c3 because of ultimately it's the amount of work involved with handling finances. It's that legal risk, you know, figuring out taxes. There's a lot involved in that. Maybe one day we might want to form our own 501c3 or something similar. We don't know yet, but that's something we'll figure out in the future. And then we'll also want to expand partnerships with allied groups. And so this is kind of the next part. You know, in order to be successful as an organization, it really depends on the passion that everyone like you bring to the group. So, you know, there's, of course, you know, there's a program, there's a project, there's a committee for every kind of interest. You know, you guys might know I personally am not a packaging engineer. I mean, you don't have to be a packaging engineer to be part of this group, or you don't have to be a healthcare professional. You know, the intent of what we're trying to do here is to bring together diverse groups of people to collaborate on packaging. So you don't have to be an expert either. You know, there's something for every skill level. You know, and of course, what we're doing here is not a full-time job for any of us. You know, our full-time jobs, of course, take priority over this. So, you know, we all have limited amounts of time in our daily lives, both at work and outside of work. So that's also an important reason why we need more people to carry out this work. So next slide.
So in fact, the next slide is Q&A, and I'm going to interject here for a second. Because everyone that's just presented is new at this, and this is the first time we're using some of the tools. One of the polling questions was skipped inadvertently. So Tommy, can you share the poll for the sustainability end of life for us? I think there might have been one or two.
Thank you, Jen. Really appreciate that.
Yep, no problem. Do you want me to switch back to your slides, Jen?
I think we are okay. Ultimately, Kylie and I are just trying to get a gauge in industry about sustainability, advanced recycling. It looks like the poll, it's sharing right now. And so any information that you could provide, it is the first question's a yes/no question. So are you currently or have you evaluated advanced recycled materials for your company? So curious to know there. And then once you have finished that question, looking at more of a fill in the blank. So any insight you could provide will be helpful to our team. Thank you so much. Oh, actually, I'll do the next question too, which is, what do you see as the primary barrier to the adoption of advanced recycled resins in medical product packaging? So fill in the blank, and we appreciate your responses.
Do you want me to wait for a second?
It's in the chat, so I think people should be able to fill it out in the chat as they're listening to if they have additional comments.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Jen.
So yeah, no problem. Thank you. With that, we're in with our question and answer, and Rod and Ralph, it is all you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jen. So we did, we solicited from the project managers and also the committee managers and some possible questions. And they are up, so we'd like to talk about those. But we did have a couple in the Q&A that Rod, maybe I'll read those and we'll answer those. Those were specific to a couple of the project groups because we'd like to address any questions that you all have. And by all means, we're monitoring the Q&A. It's the Q&A button, not the chat button. If you see that is what we're looking at. So, but the first question was about what committee group in ASTM is the standard being developed, and that was a question for the aseptic handling group. I think Sarah, you were talking about it. So
Yeah, Melinda is actually going to take our question. So Melinda, if you want to take it away. Hopefully.
I'm sorry, my connection was not good. Ralph, can you repeat that question?
Sure. So the question is, what committee group in ASTM is the standard that Sarah was describing on aseptic handling? What ASTM committee subcommittee is taking that on, or is that targeted for?
Yeah, Sarah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what the committee it was.
Yeah,
Do you want me to pinch hit on this one, Sarah?
Yeah, so Deanne is leading that part, so that's the only reason why.
Yeah, so so a usability hand or guide is being developed right now, and that's in the F-250. I believe that regardless of which subcommittee this work item that you're talking about will fall in, it'll be in the F2 overarching group. So as we get closer to that, I think we'll probably make some additional announcements on the LinkedIn group.
Great. Okay. Great.
I asked that question
yeah,
because there are other committee groups in ASTM that will be interested. So we should probably try and liaison with them. That's all.
And that's Jan, that's definitely the plan. We wanted to get our procedure and stuff drafted first before going forward with that. But I totally agree. Especially with having the usability ASTM committee as well, or that method going. We want to make sure we kind of diversify it as best as we can.
Right. And there's a whole medical device group. So yeah, I'm just wanted to check on that. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. Yeah, I think you're referring to FO4 and perhaps some other groups too, but okay. Well, Jan had the other question actually. Oh, go ahead. No, Sarah, if you had something else.
I was going to say we've been between like 3 of them, so it's not totally positive yet, is my best 2 cents on where we're at.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I kind of speak personally. I've been involved in kind of cross ASTM committees, and it resides in one committee, but you get participation from allied committees, and so yeah, that's a great way to go. The other question was from Jan as well. Thank you, Jan. Was for the sustainability group, and Jan, you really just, I think it was a comment. So, do you want to speak to that? It was on what's going on in ISO TC 122.
Yeah, the ISO TC 122 is the packaging committee, and they have a sustainability group, and they are actually looking at a chemical recycling standard right now. They have a technical paper on it, but it's not a standard itself. And I didn't know if someone from the group might want to get involved with that, because that's an international standard that's being looked at by a lot of countries.
Thank you, Jan. Yes. So I know Jordan Montgomery is part of that group, if I'm correct.
Okay, if he is, I don't know it, because I am the tag leader for the US and I need to have that information.
Oh, maybe not then. The only reason I say that is I've been talking with Jordan about including some information about chemical or advanced recycling in ISO 11607. So he might be a different leader for one of the ISO documents. But yeah, Jen, the more information you have on this, the better. We would love. We've also been in contact with Deborah Wilson, I believe is her name, who was talking about writing a standard around advanced recycling as well. So there's a lot of effort here, and it would be really nice to collaborate on this effort to not be doing the same things in different buckets. I know HPRC is doing some work in collaboration with us as well. So yeah, so maybe Kylie and I could set up a quick chat with you to just get the download and see who's been involved and ensure that someone is making sure that we're not overlapping.
Yeah, because it would be really good to make sure everybody is working in the same area. Because I know E60's done a whole bunch of stuff on purchasing and other things like that for sustainability. So yeah, we need to make sure everybody's speaking on the same platform
Completely
or
agree.
method or whatever.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Jan. I will, I don't know if I have your email address. I'll send you a chat and see if you can send me your email address. That would be helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Hey, Rod, you want to lead us through, get us started in the questions that are posted there?
Our canned questions,
Our
absolutely.
canned questions, yeah.
So leading off, how will education learnings be shared out to the end users? Jen, would you like to comment on that answer?
Not really, but I can. So that's one of the things that the marketing communications and branding group is working on because of the diversity of the audiences that we have for the different topics that we're talking about. We're trying to develop kind of a reference guide for the different groups to use when they go to publish their information. We're also looking at it from a perspective of white papers versus technical documents and or just awareness. And so it'll be different avenues that we would go after for the different type of communication that we want to do. Kennedy, Yen, do you have anything to add?
I do not. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, Kat, you got your hand up.
Oh, I see. Kat, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, on top of what Jen said, just historically in the past, I know for the last 100 yards, the repetitive handling group, what we've been doing so far is trying to get what our studies are showing out to as many people as possible, but by doing those podcasts that Tanya mentioned earlier and also doing conferences. So far, that's how we have been doing it, but obviously the marketing committee is going to make it a lot easier for us to reach more and a wider audience.
Thank you, Kat. All right, second question. Would there be a pain point you see coming up when striving to break industry silos? Does anyone want to tackle that conversation? I think anyone from members could actually provide an answer here.
Yeah, but I'm looking at somebody raises their hand. I'm looking at yeah. Any brave person.
So I think this has been part of our goal from the get-go, from the first day that we really started talking. Thinking back to some of the earlier conversations that we had in the executive committee, Rod. It's one of our missions is to break those silos, and I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that so far. I think the big pain point, at least initially, was breaking that barrier in the first place and finding the right people. Luckily, through some of the AMY groups that that are within the sterilization standards group, there was already some of it going on. So next, the big pain point is making sure that the communication gets to the right communities when it is available. Does anyone else from the executive committee or even attendees might have something to say about this? KIP is intended to be a conversation and a progression towards a better place for the entire value chain. So all voices welcome.
I can also add, part of it was also with the diverse groups of people were being pulled together and that were involved initially. I think one of the first things we learned was we all had different assumptions about what steel barrier packaging involves between, say, packaging engineers and the healthcare community. There were just a lot of different assumptions, and so I think education was just a big part of, where do we begin? How do we get on the same page on a lot of these things?
I'd like to add a comment. I would say this. I would say that there is a little bit of magic happening in KIPP that I do not see happening in a lot of these other organizations. And when we think about maybe some of the direction, and I think they're very important conversations happening, you name it, ASTM, AMI, ISO, HPRC, all of these other organizations, I tend to find that the broad end-to-end participation is lacking and absent in many of those other organizations. And I think that's what I find as a little special and magical about KIPP is the very welcoming, low barrier to entry, opportunity to participate, full engagement, conversation forum is what's helping to break down some of these silos between the groups having the opportunity to communicate and have conversations that interact between across the industry. I hope we don't lose that magic as this organization puts a little more structure. So I think I've always feared the balance behind the governance, the structure, and too much control with the ability for these conversations to be free flowing, available, and the output that is coming from these conversations. So that might be my fear, as well as a pain point associated with where this is going. And I think we need to make sure we keep that in check.
Yeah, well said, Rod. We only have a couple minutes left. Maybe there's kind of two questions on the board that kind of are related. I think one is how can I get more involved, and the other one is what is the expected time commitment for involvement in KIPP activities. So would anyone like to speak to that? Those that are been actively involved in KIPP, it would be great to share. Kat just went.
I can speak to how do we get involved. Obviously there's the biggest thing, and like where we're going to put a lot of our communication is on the LinkedIn community. So if you can join that group, that's where a lot of it is starting, and that's where we're putting up like what projects and ideas, because we are always looking for more projects. What are the pain points that people are seeing in the industry? So if you post that stuff or want to get involved and see something, that's the first place to start. And you can contact anyone on there. I think that we have a list of who all the program co-chairs are, like you just saw. You can reach out to them on LinkedIn, or after this, feel free to email any one of us, the committee members or the program co-chairs, email them. If you don't already have their email, let someone know and we can get that to you. And then as far as the time commitment, we want to be very upfront. This is a volunteer effort. So the time commitment is based on what you're free to give, like what you're willing to give. Your work comes first, your day-to-day work comes first. So it can be anywhere from, an hour a week or half an hour, or even just like an hour a month to, weekly involvement. It just depends on what you're passionate about and what you're working on. So it's up to you really. And we're happy to have as many people actively engaging in this community.
Yeah, well,
if I can add from a time commitment standpoint, Kylie and I have been pretty straightforward with our teams that we understand completely that it is a volunteer position from all of us. And at the same time, we want to, the thing I truly believe differentiates this group from other working groups I've worked on in industry is this is a roll your sleeves up, get involved group. So we do not, recommend being in one of these groups if you're just trying to learn or educate yourself. We look for people who are actively engaged, asking where they can help, taking action items, and moving the ball forward as fast of a pace as we can. So just wanted to add that one little nugget.
Good.
Thanks, Jen. David Jagrowski, who's got his hand up. David?
Yeah, look at that, huh? Things do happen. Hey, great conversation, great meeting. I've been active with the group. Just to the users out there, and I think this kind of goes back to the pain points is that, we're all short-staffed. We have staffing issues going on in our departments and SPD. And like you say to yourself, where am I going to have the time to do this? You have to kind of push through. This is your chance to make change. This is your chance to impact industry and to impact the profession that you're involved in. And I've been involved. I've loved every minute of it. Like we said, it is a voluntary group, but if you can just make the time, you can make a little sell point. You should run this by if you're going to do this during business hours at the hospital, you should run this and kind of do a value add and explain to your boss or whoever you report to what the value is to not only the industry, but to directly to the hospital. But, it's just pushing through and making that last commitment. And if you guys want to see, look here, but if you want to see what an example of commitment is, here's where I am right now doing the meeting. So out Fargo. Okay. So just push through and get involved, and this could be your legacy. This could be your impact on the industry for time to come. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Hey, Dave, you get the award for the best background of the meeting. No, I think we're at time, Jen and Rod, and I don't think we could end up with better comments than the three that were just given by KIP members. They really summarized it really well. I'll just throw one other thing too, that we have the LinkedIn group, and we do also have the Microsoft Teams group that by all means reach out to me or Jen, and we'll add you to that. So, but I think that's it. I think we're at time.
Thank you to everyone. I hope you get to enjoy some holiday time, family time, rest and relaxation. And I'll give it to Jen for final words.
I think you guys wrapped it up really nicely. Thank you everyone for calling in today. If you're not involved yet, please get involved. We've given you some opportunities to reach out to us. We hope to see you soon. But same sentiments as everyone that's already expressed. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jen.
Bye.
Thanks, Jen.
everyone.